And now with the program, here's Kevin Mooney.
All right, Dennis, thank you, and good morning, everyone. We're going to have kind of a special news extra this morning. We have Mark Donahue here. He is the writer and producer of the planned War College movie that documents about 6 students that come to a college much like Hiram Scott. That's what the movie is detailed from, and explains what they go through. And Mark is one of those Hiram Scotties. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. That's what we call them around here. It's kind of Scotties, I guess.
Well, we called you the Townies, so
yeah,
there you go.
There you are. So anyway, he is here to talk about the plan for this movie. And why don't we explain, I guess, first of all, how you got this idea. You went to Hiram Scott, and you were a basketball player there. And this is his. Dave's taken a video of his warm-up jersey here, and the blue and gold, and the Hiram Scott on the back of it. And you were a basketball player. Explain how you got to Hiram Scott, because you were from back east like most of the other guys, right?
Yeah, I had heard about Hiram Scott. I frankly had not planned to go to college. It was not something my family ascribed to at the time. And then the Vietnam War got the attention of a lot of people.
Yeah.
I remember specifically going to the funerals of 2 young men who had died in 1964 from my high school. And it what had been called a conflict, not a war, by the news media, became real. When you saw guys your age laying in coffins, it became real. And all of a sudden, I think I, along with thousands of other guys, decided maybe higher education wasn't a bad idea. So I had waited to the last minute to apply to college. I'd played basketball in college, and I got a letter from Forty Anderson, the basketball coach, who had coached at Michigan State, and back in the Midwest, he had been to 2 NCAA tournaments, Final Four. He was the real deal. And so he said, hey, we're starting a college out there, and why don't you come out? And so I did. I accepted the invitation to come out, and I had never been away from home, and I came out here when I was 18 years old. And at the time, I don't think anybody could be as undirected in life as I was at that point. But I found out a lot of young men at that time were undirected. And as I began to when I came out here on, I think it was October 5th, 1965, it suddenly dawned on me. I was walking down Broadway. I was alone. My parents weren't here. I was alone. I was 18. And either you do it or you don't. And I think a lot of guys grew up during that era when they came out here. And as I kind of agonized over the name of the script in the book, War College, I wanted it to be a play on words, because War College means normally it's a military institution of some kind. But here, a lot of guys came because of the Vietnam War, but a lot of guys came here for other reasons. And not everybody who was on campus was against the Vietnam War. Let me make that clear. There were some guys who were for it. And that made for some pretty interesting conversations at, in the dining room, or in the hallway, or on the street corner, for that matter. There was a couple instances, nothing bad necessarily, but the Armory was down there on Broad Street, and I remember there were some protesters, anti-war protesters, on the other side of the street. And then these World War II vets and Korean vets came out, and they were kind of protesting across the street. But it was nothing, it was nothing violent. Ended up having beers and talking to them, and that's the way it was back then. It was, so Scottsbluff allowed me and a lot of other guys at my age to grow up. I think of the term sanctuary. Came out here, you caught your breath. What am I going to do in my life? And Scottsbluff and the people of Scottsbluff kind of never really left me, because the people out here were very kind to not only me, but to a lot of people. Yeah.
You played basketball. You mentioned as a freshman, you were like the star player, got interviewed the very first game.
Well, no, let me clarify
on
that.
The radio, right?
I wasn't the star player of that team.
But you did pretty well the first game, obviously.
I did.
Right?
I think I scored 20 points the first game.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's not bad. I was star of the game that first game. But when I came out here, it was kind of a funny story. When I played in high school, I thought I was a hot shot. I averaged 25 points a game, and I was going to, be a great player somewhere. And I came out here, and the first day of practice, I found out on this team, which I'm showing you a picture of right now, there were 9 high school All-Americans on that team. This fellow here, Richie Moore, if I can find Richie, where is he? Right there. He was a college All-American at Villanova. He went on to play in the NBA. This guy here was 6'9", 6'10". Isaiah King the old saying was he could put a quarter on the top of the bank board and come back and
I'd heard of Isaiah King, and I just got here in 84. I've been here 35 years, but I think I've even heard the name.
Well, the first time we played, we went down and played the University of Denver in a practice game, and they'd never heard of us. And we went in there and beat them by 32 points. And that's how good we were. We had a great team for the 2 years I played here, but everybody here on this team had played college ball before except me. And I came in, the first day of practice, I said, what the heck am I doing here? These guys are really, really good. So finally I worked my way up to be a 6-man, but I was not the star of the team, but there was some really good, all these guys, 3 or 4 guys played for Michigan and Michigan State, and they transferred down here, or they flunked out and then came down here.
Yeah.
But when we walked on the court, we played Wyoming, we played Denver, we played Air Force Academy, we played some other big schools. We beat them soundly, and we played teams here in the Midwest, in Iowa and Nebraska, and we just destroyed them. We were that good.
Yeah.
But I was not the star of the team.
Okay. All right. So why did you decide to think about putting a script together about your experience at Hiram Scott and kind of maybe a fictional thing about Hiram Scott and why people went there and the education people got here?
My experience of Hiram Scott changed my life, and I never forgot that. I wasn't an all-star student in high school. I came here, I got involved in college. In fact, my first English teacher said, you ought to be a writer. I had never even thought about being a writer. And at the time, I did not look at writing as an opportunity. I ended up, when I left here, I got involved in commercial real estate in Philadelphia. I got a job up there, had a 35-year career, and I was on the board of directors of 2 Fortune 500 companies. All that emanated from me coming here and getting my bearings. I left in 1967. I went back, and graduated undergrad from a school in Ohio called Wright State University, played basketball there as well, and ended up in graduate school there. But everything emanated from me spending a year and a half in Scottsbluff. I grew up, I got scared, I realized, I had to look beyond just what I wanted to do. I was impacted by the war. All these things happened. So when I left, I never forgot about Hiram Scott. I never forgot about the people who were so nice to me out here. And it was always in the back of my mind. So if you go to our website, it's DRW2 Media Group, you'll see I have 10 projects. So when I retired from commercial real estate, I finally decided to listen to 2 college professors and write. So I wrote scripts. What I do is I write a script first, then I write a novel afterwards, and the copy of Last at Bat here is an example of that. And the War College never really left me, but when I found that warm-up that you pointed out, when I found it, it triggered something in me. Let's do it. Let's finally write this script, and I'm writing a book as well.
Yeah. It's about 5 kids that come to Hiram Scott to kind of get away from the war. They have another buddy that goes to war that ends up dying, right?
Correct. And it's not, I think all of us, when in that era, pardon me, in that era, I don't know how you could be in this country and not be impacted by the war. Mm-hmm. It was like something that hung over you, and whether you were for it or against it, it was in the paper every day. That was an era where I don't know anybody who didn't know somebody who was killed in Vietnam. And so it became, in 1964, only 2,200 people were killed in Vietnam. By 1969, 16,000 a year were being killed. A year. And when it was all said and done, over almost 60,000 people were impacted. Now you multiply that by the number of mothers and dads that were impacted, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, friends. Everybody was touched by it. So the impact that had is the story I wanted to tell, and take just 1 year out of that nightmare of 10 years between 1965 and 1966. I focus on 5 young men who were impacted by that war. And what basically happens is they come out to Hiram Scott and they're changed by their experience. They didn't get the greatest education in the world here. That was never the intention, but they grew up. And those 5 guys became close friends in the year they were here. The story goes back and forth between 1965 and 66 and 2016. What happens is, when they get ready to leave school in 1966, after their first year, they sit on the stoop or on the curb in front of your bakery on Broadway Street. It's 6 in the morning. They just came from a wild beer bash. They're saying goodbye that day, and they sit down and they're waiting for the bakery to open, which we did, by the way. We ate more donuts per capita in the years I was here than anybody. And they sit there and they say, what are we going to do with our lives? And they talk about it. And they said, we got a great idea. Let's meet at some point in time and we'll get back together again. They say, yeah, well, next year? No, it's too soon. How about 50 years? Let's meet back here in 50 years. Well, the story traces all 5 of those guys during the time they're in Hiram Scott, in Scottsbluff, and what they do with their lives. And then in 2016, one of the guys comes back, and he's sitting on the curb 50 years later waiting for the other people to show up. And what I'm not going to tell you is who shows up.
Okay.
And what happens to them. But it goes back and forth in time, and it traces how that year in their lives impacted all 5 of them.
All right. So let's quickly talk about your itinerary while you're here, because you want to talk to some Scotties to just get a feel for how they felt as well while they were here at Hiram Scott, right?
That's correct. My perspective, I lived with the jocks, the wrestlers and the football players and the basketball players. We had our own little, deal going on at the dorms. But everybody else had a different perspective. And not everybody is going to agree with what I agreed with. So I'm looking for people who had a different viewpoint of what happened to them out here. And I looked to add some information to my script, learn some things, and put scenes down that emanate from the people that I haven't talked to yet.
Yeah. All right. So you are going to be today over at the Scottsbluff Public Library from 11 to 1 over at Lied Scottsbluff Public Library if you'd like to meet and talk with Mark. And he's also going to be at the Bard's Den Books and Beyond at 1625 Broadway tomorrow afternoon from 2 to 4. He'll host some book signings for his novel Last at Bat here. And you also want to talk to people at the Fairfield Inn at 6 p.m. tomorrow night as well, right?
Yeah, if people had graduated or attended Hiram Scott, that'd be nice to reconvene there so I can learn some things from them.
Fairfield Inn at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. It'd be a nice time to do it. If you can't do it during the day, either today or tomorrow. So once again, if you have some time, 11 to 1 over at the Lied Scottsbluff Public Library today, over at Bard's Den and Books and Beyond on Broadway, 2 to 4 tomorrow. Or if you can't make any one of those times, stop by. Mark would like to talk to you at 6 p.m. Scotty's reunion, right?
I guess you could call that.
Scotty's reunion.
That's
tomorrow
right.
night, Fairfield Inn. It'd be a great place to have one.
Which means there'll be beer there.
I'm sure. Well, if it's Hiram's, most Scotties I know drink beer. So anyway, Fairfield Inn, right around 6 o'clock.
That's right.
Tomorrow night.
Thank you for having me.
Well, good luck with the project.
I appreciate
Sounds
it.
like fun. Keep us in touch as to what's going on.
Will do.
And anytime you want to talk about it, let us know.
Okay.
All right. Mark Donahue, writer-producer of the planned movie, War College.